C.A. Conrad has worked with the ancient technologies of poetry and ritual since 1975. Their latest book is Listen to the Golden Boomerang Return from Wave Books and UK Penguin in 2024. They received the Ruth Lilly Poetry Prize, a Penn Josephine Miles Award, a Creative Capital Grant, a Pew Fellowship, and a Lando Award. The Book of Frank is now available in 9 different languages, and they co-edited Supplication, selected poems of John Wiener, which came out from Wave Books. They exhibit poems as art objects with recent solo shows in Tucson, Arizona, as well as in Spain and Portugal. They teach at the Sandberg Institute in Amsterdam, and you can visit them on the web at linktree/CA Conrad88. And about C.A. Conrad's work, and I'll just give everyone a bit of a preface that I'm a collagist, so when I do introductions, I often will throw together a lot of the language that the poets use in their work. So I will not read all of the quote-unquotes because they kind of get in the way. In the apothecary of C.A. Conrad's Mountain Throat Temple, poems are not tradable commodity goods, but fleshy residue of repetitive learning how to climb out of these factory-like structures, these cocoons of conventionalized, predictable suffering we call modern human life. C.A. opts instead to work with more ancient technologies, the body and the blood, and I would probably add the piss and the shit and the vomit too sometimes, in surreal rituals aimed at awakening the Paleolithic memories stored in flesh, be it human or of other animals on the prairie, by the bay, in the city, or incarcerated in prisons or zoos, whether they are communing with the dead in the morgue of a refrigerated grocery aisle or absorbing the vibrations of field recordings of recently extinct species. C.A.'s actions become prayers to the earth, hastening the pressurized release of an extreme present where the furniture of future wastelands open to us and the unexpected inserts itself, and we can fall in love with the world as it is, a vibrant place. We didn't think we could open up like the fractal, drop to hear our own harmonics in the muffled underground hum of seeds. Please welcome C.A. Conrad.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's an honor to be here with you. Paul Nelson invited me to be part of a SPLAB workshop series about, 23 years ago here. And I just love coming back, and this community has just grown and prospered and thriving and beautiful. When I was invited to give this talk, I didn't tell Paul this, but I nearly said no thank you, because I thought, I don't know if I really want to give the keynote. And I had this very grand idea about what it was going to be at first, but the closer we got to the election, I decided to just sort of narrow all of my choices into the things that I do when I'm teaching in particular, which is all about this word intrusion that Matt was used. It's the workshop that I teach the most, these intrusion rituals, which I'll talk about later. But next year is my 50th anniversary of reading and writing poetry. I'm very excited about that. And that's something I've been thinking about a lot when I was thinking about, I was going to read you something. I was like, no, I don't do that. I'm not going to read your term paper. I don't write those. But that's where it was going originally. So the thing is about this that makes me very excited when I think about this is what it was like when I was younger, especially in Philadelphia as a teenager. You know, there was always this very bad advice everywhere. And I didn't listen to anything anybody said ever. I was just so glad that I didn't. You know, there were all these, when I was a teenager, there were always these old men around that would just say these ridiculous things like, wine loosens the tongue, to get you to write your poems to loosen your tongue. I was like, you're an alcoholic. I know all about them. I was raised by them. No. I've seen so many poets absolutely destroy themselves with drugs and alcohol. Perfectly amazing poets who are just missed, and they just sort of vanish in this vortex they create, this sort of ridiculous Rimbaud fascination, forgetting that Rimbaud only wrote poems a couple years, and then went on to be a gun runner. I don't know, I'm not trying to put down Rimbaud. Let me see. No, I'm going to have to click towards Jason. Jason, thank you so much for helping me set this up. Is it possible to move the cursor to the... Thank you. It traveled. What am I doing? Okay, let's go back. Okay, that's Mount Rainier, as you can see. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about all the things that not only have been said to me over the years about what to do, how to write, who you should read to be a good poet, all of these things, and it was always annoying, and it always contradicted the next thing you were told. When you're younger, there's just all this unsolicited advice that just comes slamming you in the face in the poetry community. And it's nice, people want to talk to you about poetry, but it's a little bossy. At least it was back then. I think it's changed now. I do. I feel like things are a little different. Maybe I'm just being naive, but it just seemed harsh when I was younger. Like, nobody's going to take you seriously if you don't read Ezra Pound, that kind of thing, But I did want to talk about why I use these rituals briefly. So, I started writing in 1975, like I said, and that has a story that has nothing to do with what I'm about to say, but it was started when I was working for my mother because she was in trouble with the law, and so I was working for her, selling bouquets of flowers on the side of the highway. And when I first started writing poetry, it was just like the gates of heaven opening up. I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it never stopped. I've been writing ever since. But in 2005, I ran away as a teenager to Philadelphia because I didn't want to stay where I grew up because everybody worked in factories. I come from factory workers. And when I went to Philadelphia, my life became exactly what I wanted. Writing. I moved there to be a poet. That's what I went there for. And it was very exciting. It made me very happy. Although it was right in the heart of the AIDS epidemic, really taking traction. I arrived in '84. I wound up losing half of everybody I knew to the disease. And that disease played a big role in everything that I did. It even plays a big role in what I do today, why I do what I do. But I do want to say this, in 2005, after surviving all of that, I was making friends with some graduate students in a creative writing program, and they were connected inside themselves with their writing and the lives they were leading in their writing lives in a way that I couldn't see in myself. And I wasn't sure what that was for a little while. By the way, I'm not a motivational speaker. I'll make that very clear. I'll put that out there. Motivational speakers want to drink water. Right, they just power through it. I just feel like it's important to say that, because I don't want you to feel like I'm up here. Anyway, I don't know. So, I'm making friends with these grad students, and I couldn't figure out what it was for a while. And after about a week of pondering it, I realized that's our backgrounds. They come from, I'm still friends with these people. They're incredible poets. They come from doctors, lawyers, engineers, and I come from factory workers. And what this means is that when you're raised by factory workers, you glean, whether you like it or not, this technique that factory workers, at least my family, has developed to survive these jobs. And I know that sounds very grand to say survive, but I do mean it. When you go to work in a factory, you become an extension of a machine for 10 hours or more. Nobody's working 8 hours anymore in this country. And my family works in cardboard box machine, the dental floss machine, metal punch machine. And in order to survive that, they need to shut the present off, and they live in the past and the future while they're working.
And when they go home, they don't know how to flip that switch back. And they were raised by factory workers, so it's possible they never had the sense of the present. And that was why I started doing these rituals. Once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I want to do something that anchors me in the present. So I can't be thinking about anything else. Do you want me to tell you about the first one that I did? So I like to go to Barnes & Noble and not buy anything. That's my motivational speech there, because, and I use it as a library. And the thing is, the business books in Barnes & Noble have a subcategory that's very fascinating. It's all about marketing research. I refer to this as, I worked for Barnes & Noble briefly, and I would write on it like new anthropology, because they're studying us. And not just our behavior to sell us things we don't need, but our physiology, how the eyeball works. Very strange. And the military's involved in these articles. I don't know what that's about. They're always involved. But I was reading one of these articles before this crisis, just prior to this crisis, when I thought, I'm not connected like these new friends of mine with the writing. And I was reading in this article where they said, from a piece of research they were referring to, that as much as 80 to 90% of human interaction is nonverbal. Well, I don't know if I still don't know if I believe it, but it's very interesting and exciting information. And I thought, okay, how can I use this? Well, when I wanted to do these rituals, the first ones I did, I ate a single color of food for a day, for 7 days, and would wear the color. So the first poem I did was the red poem. And I found a red wig in a beauty academy, in a dumpster in the alley behind a beauty academy where I was living in Philadelphia. And it was very long. It was half very straight, like almost like it was ironed. And the other half was like literally the absolute other hemisphere of it was permed very badly, so it sort of dangled like this. And I thought, if I wear that red wig around and eat red food in the city, I'll get a lot of nonverbal communication. And I did. I really did, all day long. People just basically walk and clear away from me. But it's communication, right? I don't want to be near you. I'm saying something. So, but I learned two very valuable things at the end of that first day. The first was that it worked. I was absolutely present for every moment of that writing in a way that I never had been before. It was very exciting. But the second thing I learned, which I think might be more important, is that I would have never written that poem for any other reason at any other time. The ritual orchestrated the language for the poem. So that was very exciting. I just took off doing them, all kinds of them. But the thing is, I really wanted them to do things that I wasn't sure they could do. I know it's weird, I'm pointing it towards Jason, but this is what he told me to do. Hello. Come on in. Before I talk about this ritual, it's going to be a little confusing to say it the way I'm going to say it, but I'm sure maybe you've said it yourself, or you know people who have said that you do your best work when you're depressed. You've heard this, right? I agree, and I also disagree. So I agree because it is happening. I'm not denying somebody their reality. But why? My feeling, which is unpopular with some people, but that's the way life is. I feel that what's going on is that when we go through the day doing all the things we have to do to get through this, there's so much to do to get through the day. You have to bathe so nobody hates you for stinking. There's so many, obey traffic signals. There's a lot to do to get through one part of the day to the other. I find it really annoying sometimes. But you do all these things. Now, if something occurs, somebody's very sick, who you love, or a lover of 7 years, is usually 7, leaves you, or you're in the emergency room because somebody you love has been injured, all of those things you think about just vanish, and you're thinking about this one topic. So you see, I believe it's not the depression so much as the space it affords you. But once we realize that, we can get rid of this romantic notion of depression helping us. It doesn't. Neither does drugs and alcohol. I'm tired of it. In fact, what I'm about to show you is not only do I not if I have to be depressed to write poems, I'm going to be taking up golf or something. Not interested. No. What is it that amazing Canadian poet Anne Cameron says about Sylvia Plath? She says, I have no room in my life for fascists and no room in my oven for my head. And I love her for saying that. It took nerve to say that. I agree. So, but the thing is, I had this boyfriend. This book is Where the Rituals While Standing in Line for Death. This is my boyfriend, Earth. He was one of the main organizers of ACT UP in Philadelphia when we were much younger. He was a few years older than me. And, well, anyway, we went through all these years of burying friends, going to funeral after funeral after funeral. There was only one church in Philadelphia that allowed funerals of people who died of AIDS. And it's a city of millions and millions of people. So you were in that church all the time. And it was awful. But after we were both surprised how we just survived all those years, like walking through a minefield and not dying with everybody. We were HIV negative. It was peculiar. We were like, oh, we're going to live. But he changed his name to Earth because he was also an environmental activist. And he went to the state of Tennessee to work. I really wanted him to not go. It was a very long conversation that he thought I was kind of ridiculous about. Just because I helped raise money for this queer spiritual community back in the 80s, and I'm just not a big fan of what's going on down there in general in the community around the gay queer community. Anyway, I was on the phone with him. I was going to go visit, and he told me about a cave he found on the side of the mountain that he was meditating in every morning before going to work in the gardens. I said, oh, that's nice. And then 3 days later, I found out that he's dead. And the police told me that it was a suicide, that he killed himself. And I was like, what? And then his brother walked in. There's been a documentary made about all this, trying to find, and his brother walked into this bookstore where I was working at the time and showed me the death certificate. And it said homicide, victim. And it turns out he was bound, hogtied, gagged, tortured, raped, and then covered in gasoline and burned alive. And, I thought the worst years of our lives were behind us, and that happened. And, I was a dancer before his death. I was very athletic, and I rode a bicycle everywhere, and I gained all this weight, and my life just flew apart. And, but I finally found a ritual, this is where this is going, to finally get through this. The police to this day still have his death written up as a suicide. The sheriff I had to deal with at the time was, he would just call me faggot on the phone. And not at first. He was very polite, very southern hospitality for about a week. And then when I kept insisting that this was a homicide and that we needed the FBI invited, he got angrier and angrier. He eventually sent the Philadelphia police to my home. These 3 cops show up, and one of them, when I step out into the hallway, one of them grabs me by my hair and slams my head against the wall, while another one kicks my legs apart, and a third one screams into my ear to leave their brothers in blue in Tennessee alone. And that's when the depression set in. I was very determined before that. I was like, I'm going to find out who did this. And then that happened. And, once the police do that, it's just, the Philadelphia police are just, famous for not being kind. But anyway, I decided after years of this struggle to try to get this out of me. So I'm going to be talking about a ritual later on in the festival about intrusions that I do in my intrusion workshop, about how to get these out of the body using the feet and all kinds of other things. But in this case, I'll be honest with you, I did 2 versions of the ritual that failed. And then finally, I used this. He gave me this crystal the last time I saw him alive. And I was thinking about crystals in the sense of how they're used in industry and science. They're used in computers and technology. They have this specific and undying, absolutely uninterrupted pulse. That's why they're so valuable. More than anything else on the planet, this consistency. But the chambers of it also hold on to information. So I was pushing that ancient technology. So this crystal was in his pocket he gave this to me the last time I saw him. It was in his pocket and it was his left pocket, and he's right-handed, meaning like that's the side where things come through. It was in his pocket for almost a year and a half. He carried it everywhere. So I treated it like a library. And what I did, I was at this place called McDowell Art Residencies in New Hampshire. And I decided what I did was I put his crystal under my hair wrap pointing down. Then I would swallow a smaller, you have to be careful when you're swallowing crystals, you know. This is an aside. You know, just don't go doing that. So, you know, it has to be very smooth. And then you would sterilize it the next morning. And anyway, when I was giving my presentation, one of the directors, Cheryl, was in the back. I didn't know she was there. And she said, she said, after, you mean you've been shitting crystals at McDowell? I was like, well, yeah. They got to come out. And she's like, that's awesome. Can you make a video, you know, for the... I mean, a video of... She's like, no, of what you're doing, not in general, not like shitting. But anyway, I'll tell you the thing is about this ritual, it worked very quickly. And here's how I knew it worked. I had this film in my head, this, you know, when there's an injustice and you create this fiction that you live with to try to correct it in your imagination. The police are human beings. There's a courtroom drama. The judge is yelling at the murderers. I can see the back of their heads. That film vanished. I just created it to torture myself anyway. And I was very grateful that it did. It just made me so happy. But, oh, you know what? Let me read just one poem from that. This is in a museum right now in Prague. A spider's web is made of digested fly brains, wings, hairs, legs, tears, pheromones, attracting more flies, dissolving us into the endeavor of love. Hold me to your song, it is delicious. Hear you one more time in middle of night. Tooth it open. Love all unloved parts without pause. Dear ghost, flickering with flames that no longer hurt, deflated lungs expanding, you say they can only burn a faggot once. When I was in the middle of doing this ritual, this thing occurred to me that brought this. I don't know why it never occurred to me until this particular afternoon, sitting on the forest floor with all the leaves. It was the autumn, the leaves are coming down around me. But he changed his name to Earth at a time when the planet Earth is being raped, tortured, scorched. And that's how he left this planet. And I hadn't even thought about it until then. It really shook me up for a while. And then when I calmed down, if that's the word for it, this came to mind. And what this is a ritual looking at the World Wildlife Association's biennial report. The new one will be out next year. And they claim that we've lost 70% of the wild creatures on the planet in the past half century. What I did was I took all of the recordings. They're all online. All these ornithologists, mammalogists, you name it. Entomologists, their sounds, their songs. And I was thinking about eco-poetics as not just focusing on this idea of the degraded soil, air, and water and the creatures, but also vibrational absence. That when a species leaves the planet, they take all of their sounds with them. Not just the ones that we are familiar with, but their heartbeat, their footfall, their wing flutters. Gone. And we fill it in with this din of humanity. And this is the blanket that I used when I won the... Anyway, there's Pew Charitable Trust made. This is from a manifesto. I don't go around writing manifestos, but I did. But it's more of an anti-manifesto. I mean, I'm not a big fan. They're always written by these, like, tyrants, like Andre Breton, who's, like, denouncing people, you know. I have no time for Andre Breton. But what I would do is I would take all these recordings, and I wasn't privileging my ears. I started at my feet and would move the speakers up my body, because we are over 70% water, and nothing on this planet absorbs sound like water. And, this is another, I did 9 things. I'm just going to tell you 2 things. So this is another thing I did. It took months to set this up. So I took copper bottles. Copper is very conductive metal. and I used amethyst, cornelian, and rose quartz, and then water, like a battery with an inch for freezing. I buried them in Minneapolis. I didn't want to do St. Paul because, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that saint because he hates queers and women. He's a jerk. I don't like him. But Minneapolis is a great American word. It takes the Lakota word for water and fuses it with the Greek word for city, water city, Minneapolis. And then Memphis, Tennessee, which is named after the much fabled ancient city of Memphis, Egypt. And Memphis, Egypt sits right at the mouth of the Nile, taking all this intense energy in from that. And from what I've read, the ceremonial magicians would send all that energy due east to Giza, or is it west? I think they go, anyway, they're going east or west, obviously. They could go north or south, but they're going east or west. Memphis, Tennessee sits right at the jawbone of the Mississippi. Have you been there lately? There's a 40-story glass pyramid now on the bank, and Bass Pro Shop bought it, so there's a big Bass Pro Shop logo on one part of the pyramid. And then Cheyenne, Wyoming. Because the first person who ever gave me a crystal was my friend Peppy, who is Native American, and then she wound up dying of AIDS. She was about 20 years older than I was. And then all my friends just started giving me crystals before they died, so I have this crystal collection I never intended to have. But anyway, then the seat is in Omaha, so that's the fourth bottle. And then I would sit on that. After it was all set up, I would sit on that, and then with a compass, I would align myself with Minneapolis first, eat a little bit of the dirt from that location, and listen to an ambient recording, and then write. And then I went Deasil with the sun, so I went from down to Memphis, and I would just do it I just loved doing it. It's one of my favorite things. But after working with all these extinct animals, I knew I needed to work with animals that are thriving. And that's this new book. And it started here in Seattle. I can say I lived in Seattle because I was here during COVID lockdown for a year and a half. So I lived here, technically. And it started with the crows. This is one of the world's largest populations of crows. As you know, the UW-Bothell campus has 16,000 crows in that rookery. It's extraordinary. And this crow in particular started hanging out with me. I was feeding them. And this crow started allowing me to pet their beak and ruffle these little feathers up here. And then they started bringing me these gifts. These are all pictures that are in the book as well, but they're black and white, but still they're in there. And I loved getting these gifts. It was a great conversation that I had going on with this animal. And the first was this twig, and he would shake it and set it down and tap the beak on the glass and pick it up. I didn't know for sure if this was really for me or not, because it was a long year up there alone all this time, but I thought maybe I was losing my mind. But it was for me, and when that second gift came, you see that second gift? That little piece of translucent plastic, I knew that it was really happening. This was a decision. I know who's going to like this. You were right, I did like it. And there were seeds, and then this piece of gold foil on the 12th. That was very nice. And then after COVID lockdown, I'm a Capricorn, we're really good alone, I don't know what that's about. But all my Pisces friends were constantly calling me up during COVID, like lockdown, like, oh my God, I was like, let's write poems together. Calm down, it's going to be okay. Of course, we thought it was only going to last a month. Then I wound up going down to the Mojave Desert, working with coyotes, and then the bats in Tucson. These bats, have you seen the bat bridges in Tucson? They come out, they're pouring out of underneath this bridge. And I was just down in Tucson, I'm about to show you pictures of that, and I decided to go out to watch them at sunrise this time. And when they come in, actually I got around at 3 a.m. just to make sure. When they come in like an arc, and then they go flying up into these things like you think they're going to get concussions. Like, poof, 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 poof. They're really quite extraordinary creatures. And then I talked my way into the macro at Rome. I'm not pushy, I'm assertive as a poet. When I'm invited to do readings at somebody's art opening, I always say, no thank you, I don't do that. And they say, well, what does that mean? I was like, I don't do that. We've been asked to do that for thousands of years. I'm not interested. I'm not here for you. I'm not writing poems about how great you are as an artist, and I'm showing up at your opening. They, well, what do you want? I said, I want to be in the show. Put me in the show. It's a group show. And then it turns out they would say yes. I was like, oh my God, they said yes. Now I have to do something. But I talked my way into the macro in Rome, which was great. They were like, no. I was like, I want to live in the museum as an exhibit for a month. They were like, no. I said, I want to live in the museum for 2 weeks. No. I want to live in the museum for 11 days. Oh, okay. So I got to do it, but every morning I would go down and watch the sunrise and feed the pigeons and the rats. And these rats, they're really delicious, these creatures in Rome. I'm not used to rats like this. They're like shampooed or something. They're really fluffy, and they're very sweet. And I don't know, they need, I don't know what's going on. And there was this woman there who was about 20 years older than me who was like, shh, the police arrested my friend for feeding rats. You got to be careful. You can't feed rats. So we did look out for one another, rat feeding, which was a nice thing to do, you know, something to do while you're alive. And now I live in Western Massachusetts, almost at the Vermont border, up above where Emily Dickinson lived. And there's this little red squirrel that just goes nuts every time he sees me. He's so excited because I always have nuts in my pocket. And this is a woodchuck that looks like it's got a cigarette in its hand, but it's not. This woodchuck is in love with cilantro because it doesn't grow in the wild in Massachusetts. And it's like, holy, what is this? Like, it just comes low. It's like, oh my God, cilantro. So I'm going to read a few of these. Our first lightning strike was convulsive. We felt sad for our violence after exterminating wolves and bison. We do not need a doctor to say, dance, 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 before the song runs out. Learn how to live so wilderness never becomes mythology. We put them in parks to be wild on purpose. A museum of fur, fangs, and hooves. Part of this farce tastes like the man I love, with an actual number of nails holding the bedroom together. Other days when we died, where we fell, we became the forest. My car never intended to be a meat grinder, another face going under the waves. We felt awful after hitting the deer. We made love and slept with one of his antlers between us. To desire the world as it is, not as it was. Falling feather attaches to new life. For a moment, when the hammer approached, we thought, is that thing coming this way? We are the fractal. Drop to hear our own harmonics and the muffled underground hum of seeds. Oh, so this one, in July, I was in, are you familiar with the island of Anafi in Greece, in the Jason and the Argonauts mythology?
So Jason, they're in a storm, and the god Apollo puts his foot on both of those islands, because I guess they're very big. And shoots an arrow to reveal, Anafi means to reveal, this island, and it becomes their exile. And pirates used it as a place of exile for centuries. It takes about 12 hours to get there by boat after you arrive in Athens. It's so remote. And then during World War II, the communists all over Europe would go there to hide from the Nazis. But this is a poem, and so I was part of this group where we were doing art on the island, and I had poems that were also translated on the walls. And this poem, the poet Anne Boyer published this in the New York Times, which is very fancy. But when it was published, she's like, I'm really sorry people are trashing you. I was like, oh, let me see. And it's like these crabby old dudes who are like, you don't know how to write a poem, man. And they like rewrite my poem in the comment stream, and I'm like, whatever. And I was like, I'm too old to worry about this. I would say, thank you, Daddy, your poor wife. And then when I was like, oh, it doesn't rhyme, I was like, man, that's not even an argument from the last century. What timeline are you on? All right. We stopped studying the night sky for directions. If someone said we made it up, planet Earth isn't real, we would try to verify, try to be sure. Critics are the evidence we do not trust ourselves. Your imagination is asking for parole. What is your verdict, Warden? Try to always remember the calendar made of light our ancestors followed to pass the year. And so right now, I just came from Tucson, and I have many of these poems. So this show is very exciting. It's at the Mocha in Tucson. And the poems stand, many of them from the new book and also the newer work that I'm working on, between 6 and 9 feet tall. I just wanted to show you a few of these pictures. And there's a reading room as well that I have installed in the back with all these wonderful books of poetry by 500 Places Press. I want to show you the look at it from behind, because the thing is about my poems, like I work on them so much that I know them by their shapes. And it's lovely seeing them from behind. Now I'm going to get into this. Let me just say this, though. I have to pull these notes out. Just before, in between these things, just before COVID lockdown, I received a fellowship from Madison Square Garden, not the venue, but the actual park in New York City, in Midtown Manhattan. And they wanted to build a stage and have me do readings all day. I was like, no, the air pollution here will destroy my voice. I'm not going to do that. They said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want a card table and 2 chairs. And they're like, why? What are you going to do with that? I said, I just want to meet one-on-one with people and make personalized somatic poetry rituals. When I teach in Amsterdam, the first-year students need to see me every day for a week because I'm teaching longevity of praxis. 98% of everybody who graduates from these programs stops doing their work. They spend all this money and time getting degrees and then they stop. And my job is to show them how they can keep doing it their entire lives. The example that I want to use now, because this is something that was thinking about, like solutions, right? Even the rituals in the first place for me was a solution, like how to be present. There's a woman who I met in that park in New York City, because the newspaper, the New York Times mentioned I was doing that, and it was just mobbed with all these people really irritated that they have to wait. I don't know. I'm one person, So I just said, go under those trees, get away from me, please. I said please, but I did say get away from me, because they were yelling at me. And but this woman named Dolores comes, and she's a few years older than me, and half her head was shaved with a scar and staples. She had brain cancer, and she was told she would be dead by Halloween. And I only had 10 minutes with each person. That's all I ever saw this one, but I think about her a lot. Because I said, well, Doris, she saw that I was doing this, and her daughter was coming home from Portland from graduate school to help her die, and she wanted to give her something meaningful. And she wanted to write a poem for her. And I said, okay, well, what have you been doing with your life, Dolores? And she said, she was a technical drawer, It's something that's made obsolete now by computers. Diagrams, working with architects, that sort of thing. And I said, great. And she was getting an emergency surgery in a few weeks to alleviate suffering. And I said, I want you to go home and call the doctor's office and write down everything that they can tell you that's going to be used in the I don't know, maybe scalpels, whatever. Cotton balls, I'm sure, are used eventually. And you're going to make little drawings, technical drawings of each of these, and then treat these drawings while you're writing the poem. Shit on them, bleed on them, vomit on them. Things she told me she was doing every day with And her daughter read the poem to me. My point is, these are our lives, and we get to use our time here as we want. And I feel like it's really rare that you get to do it your whole life. And so that's and I'm not a motivational speaker, but it is very nice to have to get to do it. This ritual, I watch the sunrise wherever I'm at, and then I watch the sunrise later in the day on an outdoor public webcam. The one on the bottom is one of my favorites, the Tokyo Rail Yards. The microphone's magnificent on this one. Why I like sunrise were a couple of things. Like if you squint your eyes where everything's blurry, you can't really define the matter in front of you. I sort of feel like that's sort of getting closer to what we all are. Because we've all these molecules in the room, the people and the chairs and everything. We've been here for billions of years. We're just rearranged every once in a while. So I was thinking about that blur. And also what I love about sunrise, no matter where I'm at, Total darkness, total silence. As soon as the light comes up, birds everywhere. It's just beautiful. So I'm gonna just read some of these, and do I have enough time to talk about this? Good. I'm gonna read just a few of these, and I want to tell you about somebody who I feel is very important to thinking about the power of creativity. Fruit fly, born in hotel room, died in hotel room. You think I asked for this dream? Spanning an entire known world? I might dance around you if I get a pair of bunny pants. No one can afford to lose love. I have explored the alternative. It is a wasteland. So there's more of these poems in Anafi. When you win the lottery, every dollar is someone else's dream. Once, in a mirage, listening into the open hole for the fallen, if I see him again, questions for the crocodile inside my old friend, perfume of fiction on his breath. I'm glad I was there to stop myself from gnawing the burnt ends of forgiveness. I just can't stop thinking about all these wars. This book is just filled with war poems. Go ahead. Call me a child for asking is there no war somewhere, instead of this daily butterfly fighting suck a fan blade. You should break up is my only relationship advice. On the way to slaughter, pigs on truck pass deer with broken neck. Where love is merely an afterthought, we must banish the intrusions or become them. And this is the last one. And I want to tell you about one more person. We forget the Pledge of Allegiance on the path of finding no. A flower widening a crack in the rock. When we excel as father's least favorite, it's time to put a foot in the poem. I tell you, there's nothing like waking in the flutter, passing hours of barbed wire across America, the road beneath us, the only public space. And I want to end by talking about Robert Desnos. Are you all familiar with Robert Desnos? No. You're familiar with Andre Breton? Yeah. Why? Because literary scholarship lifts up the tyrants, that's why. You know all about the tyrants. Pound, Andre, Daddy Andre, blah. Bullies, you know what I mean? Like, Breton was just a pedantic bore, and he was really mean to everybody. By the Second Surrealist Manifesto, he denounces Desnos, because Desnos is not obeying Daddy Andre's dictates. And Desnos doesn't even care. He's like, whatever, I'm busy. The Nazis are coming. And they are. And he joins the French Resistance when they get to Paris. And he's captured. And look at his, every photograph, he's got these dark circles under. That's not makeup. He's just sick all the time. And he's captured by the SS and sent to Auschwitz as a prisoner. The thing is, the moment he arrives in Hitler's death camps, because he goes to more than one for some reason, it's never explained. And anything I've ever read is unexplained why. But he does. He goes to several of them for some reason. And he starts writing a new manuscript of poems. And the Nazis don't have a kiosk where they're handing out notebooks and pens. He's using his fingernail clippings and writing with shit and dirt on scraps. He's desperate to write because he knows it's his tools, his main tool of a poet, which is the deep observation of everything around you, the creative viability of everything around you. He knows he needs to keep that sharp to survive. He's studying the guards. You see what the guards are doing to protect themselves from what they're doing to the prisoners. They're human beings, the guards. He knows this. He's surrounded by the worst atrocities, and he's studying these guards and writing these poems. And one day, the guards arrive with a flatbed truck, and they load Desnos, and it's filled with inmates from the barracks in there, and they're on their way to the gas chamber. And they'll all be inhaling Zyklon B in about 10 minutes and die. He's been studying these guards, I mean, very carefully. And he jumps off that truck. He's a palm reader. He's the palmist of that occult group, the Surrealists. And he starts getting his fellow inmates' hands, and he's reading their palms, the lifeline. And as you all know, nobody's allowed to have a name if you're a prisoner. It's a tattooed number. He's using their names over and over and over and over. These beautiful stories about the future, being reunited with loved ones and living out to their old age. The guards are so angry and confused, this loudmouth poet won't stop. Why would he stop? He knows exactly what will happen if he does. He just keeps doing this. And he just smashes through their shell. And they can't kill these people. And they quickly load them back up and send them back to the barracks. I'm positive they go kill other people. Otherwise, they probably would have been killed. But, some truck where there's not some big mouth poet on board. 3 weeks later, the Allied forces liberate that camp, and everybody is still alive in that barracks, thanks to Desnos. And we have heard the story for more than half a century about this poet who found a way to save everybody's life without a single bullet fired, which is beautiful, especially standing in a nation that spends billions of dollars on new weaponry. The drone warfare in particular, every single branch of our military has these drone research. This is evil. The New York Times just had a front page story a few days ago of the latest drones out of MIT being sent to Ukraine. There's a Ukrainian soldier with these stacked up. Have you seen these? They have these little chambers in the front of the drone that can hold onto molten metal, and then they shoot it like dragons onto metal and people and just burning molten metal. Why? Are bullets not working? Are we really? It's just the amount of creativity put into this death machine that we're all. Our government has turned us all into weapons dealers at this point. It's really disgusting. But I bring this up because Desnos showed us how creativity is the power of survival. And I just want to end by saying I was addicted to Occupy Wall Street. I lived in Philadelphia at the time, but I would go up there as many times as I could. I loved what I was witnessing. 75% of everybody living in Zuccotti Park was an art student, a creative writing student. When the police would remove something, like confiscate the bullhorns, I would watch them huddle together with their creative energies and come up with solutions. The human microphone, for instance, was invented there. I think that's where it was invented. Just beautiful witnessing that. And horizontal, no leaders, brilliant. Nobody to bribe, nobody to harass, nobody to turn. And they couldn't do anything about it. And the FBI agents were always clear, like, dude, let's rip down this fence. We're like, no. Come to the meeting and bring it up and we'll all vote on it. I guarantee we're going to say no. They didn't know about it. They had no leverage. It was so brilliant. I just loved it. So, thank you. And it's been an honor to be invited to be here with you all.